Good evening, citizens of Portsmouth. I want to welcome everyone to our public work session today on February 24th. I want to acknowledge those who are watching us online as well. Thank you all for being here. Also want to acknowledge our city staff who is with us today. Thank you for your presence. I'll identify our city manager, Mr. Stephen Carter, our interim city attorney, Mr. Derek Challenger, our city assessor, Mr. Steve Edwards, and, of course, our clerk, Ms. Deborah White. Thank you all for being here today. And with that, I will ask Ms. White to please call the roll.
Yes, sir. Ms. Bryant.
Present.
Dr. Dodson.
Present.
Mr. Hugo.
Present.
Mr. Moody.
Here.
Ms. Thomas.
Here.
Mr. Tillage.
Here.
Mayor Glover.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Manager Carter, sir, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everyone.
Good
Have a
evening.
great day today. I have a couple of presentations for you this evening. The first one is an update on our Main Street project. Ms. Liz and Ms. Michelle, I'm not sure who's going to be.
Both of us.
Okay. Then both of you. All right. Have Ben McFarland, where is he? He's in the back. He's going to present some information on the Norfolk flood wall. So, first of all, we have Main Street. We're excited for this update. Somebody's trying to join us.
Wait. Oh, I've got your mails. Oh, now they're gone. Okay. Sorry about that. No, you're good. All
All right,
right.
Liz, Michelle, it's on you.
All right. Well, thank y'all for having us here today. Again, Michelle Wren, Executive Director of the Portsmouth Partnership.
And Liz Cosling, Assistant Director.
Yeah, and we appreciate the opportunity to give y'all an update on the Portsmouth Partnership and our Main Street initiative. Let's see. Oh, there we go, maybe. Yeah, okay, sorry. New technology, working on that. So we just talked a little bit about Main Street. You know, some of you may know a little bit more about Main Street than others, so we'll go through some of the basic principles of it, and then the impact that we're having on the district. So, you know, one thing to really understand about the Main Street and the Mobilizing Main Street program that Portsmouth has entered into. So it's a 2-year program. We are a year into it, and it's a citywide program. So I think that's really important as we talk about investment, that we are starting with the Old Town District, the High Street corridor, but it's principles that can be applied throughout the whole city. So that was important in our application. There's other areas around the around Hampton Roads that only did small districts, and so we did the entire city. So the principles that we are using to revitalize High Street and our public-private partnerships can also be used in other districts throughout the entire city, which I think is really important. Whoops. The other principles that are being used, it's a four-point approach. So it's preservation-based framework for revitalization of a district. So again, it's strategies that are learned. We are getting a transformation strategy that's being done by the state, and then everything's based in 4 points: economic vitality, design, promotion, and organization. So we'll have that kind of framed as we're giving information to y'all under each point to see as, you know, what we're doing with strategy, what we're doing to incorporate that, and then how the 4 points approach is applied, which is, again, not just a Virginia Main Street, but it is a U.S. Main Street, true and tried strategy for revitalizing commercial districts. So it's something that's been proven across the United States and pieces that have been proven in the state of Virginia. So principles that we know that will work. Most important piece of this is the foundation building. So it is a public-private venture. So the private sector cannot do it alone, and neither can the public sector. It is a grassroots organization, and so it takes community members, it takes businesses, and it also takes the municipality, which is one of the principles that we love about this, because it really has really strengthen relationships. So I feel like the partnership throughout its years, we were founded in 1948, we've got strong partnerships with a lot of different entities in the city and also with different city departments and also with council. So, but this approach also strengthened that. So it relays information that we're sharing. We're meeting on a regular basis. So really the communication pieces with each of the city departments. I won't read the slide to you, but you can just see all of the private stakeholders, all the other organizations that we're working with, and also all of the city departments that we're collaborating with. So we have monthly meetings, our Main Street meetings, and representatives from all of these sectors are at our monthly meetings. So they're pretty robust, and you can see that really almost every single sector of the district is being represented. And again, that's really important because that means all the voices are being heard. So that's really, really important through this process, is to understand that there are a lot of voices at the table. Another piece that I think is fantastic, so we do have to report out. And again, we are reporting to the DCHD in Richmond. And the nice thing about this too is we're gathering information that's coming from different city departments, and it's all going in one report, which is really nice to see because you can see what's happening in the district month by month. So since August 2025, there's been 2,200 volunteer hours, 12 new units of housing placed, and $2.3 million that have gone into improvements in the district. Most of that was from the private sector. But it is nice to see, again, we're looking, when we're talking about the district, we're looking from Water Street to Effingham is what we've identified as this Main Street district, so up the High Street corridor. So it's a small area.
And this is just a snapshot of the types of data pieces that we're collecting on a monthly basis. It provides us a baseline for where we are now so that we can really capture the growth that we're anticipating through the Main Street program. And we're using a data-informed approach across all of our metrics. So one of the things that we did right off the jump was do an inventory of our properties and businesses here, cataloging over 170 businesses, figuring out not just what are in those spaces, but who the points of contact are. It was quite a bit of a deep dive there.
And we worked with economic development to do that too. So, as we go through all these data points, we are working with the municipality to gather information and to share information. Sorry, go ahead.
Yep. We also collected 755 community surveys. I think many of you probably participated in our outreach efforts there. Again, establishing a baseline for where our community thinks our district is and where it needs to go. And then if you remember, we had Main Street America in town for 3 days with us. We conducted a series of focus groups. Many of you all participated in those, but brought a really diverse set of individuals to the table to share their perspectives on the status of the district.
And then when we did those stakeholder focus groups, that was a template too that Main Street America gave us. So, they want to hear from property owners, they want to hear from business owners, and and so many from each of the categories. So again, we had a great showing of 130 individuals, but they were broad-based through all different categories, and they gave us the framework for that. Like, these are here are the stakeholders. Can you get the stakeholders from all of these areas? And we were able to get stakeholders from every single category that they had recommended.
And then they kicked Michelle and I out of the room.
Yes, they did. So we weren't allowed to hear anybody's comments. Yeah, which was good.
Yeah.
And frustrating.
Yes. But moving into more of a design side of the house here, one of the things that came out of the surveys that we did was a lot of concern about safety and lighting in our district. And so we thought we'd lean into that with our first project. So that was again, public-private partnership where we raised $50,000 from the private sector. The city was kind enough to match that for us, dollar for dollar. And we deployed that in 2 different areas. So one was an uplighting of all the crepe myrtle trees going from the 800 block down to the waterfront. And then the second side of that was incentivizing our local business owners to make their own improvements to either their lighting and or security systems.
Yep.
And so on The lighting side, the Crepe Myrtle median side, you can see some pictures here of our uplit trees. The company that we worked with was great in order to get them installed before the Christmas holidays. We were able to kind of put some red and green lights. And then traditionally throughout the year, we've landed on a sort of a Kelvin number there that really corresponds for a historic downtown district. But if you look at the right, these are smart powered lights. They're controlled with mobile apps that we have access to, Parks and Rec has access to. We'll probably open up to some other groups as well. But the idea here is we can lean into different events or holidays or things just to kind of add that festival atmosphere to the things going on in Old Town. We're also really looking forward to seeing what these will look like when the leaves come in. So I think
it'll be a little bit better.
They will improve in the spring and summer.
And then one of the reasons too we went with the uplighting, we had looked at wrapping the trees as well, but Parks and Rec really were not in favor of that because they're crepe myrtles and just the maintenance behind it for the city to having to unwrap the trees, let them breathe, and then rewrap. So that's why we went with the uplighting, to try to get the ambiance, but also to make it a little bit easier for maintenance on the city.
And then on the private side of the project, so I mentioned we had 27 businesses that we're working with, and so those projects are in various stages of completion. We have 3 projects that are completely done. So you can see Fred from the Commodore here. One of the projects was removing all of the neon lighting that he really struggled to keep his marquee fully lit at all times. That's been replaced with LED lighting, as well as a couple other projects that added lighting and security to the district. We have 6 that are in process being installed now, and then another 18 projects that are in the planning phase. All of these projects are being incentivized with a $1,000 grant through our program, and then many of them are choosing to pursue EDA, Real Property Investment Grant funding, in order to reduce their costs as well. So it's been a great partnership there. And you can see these projects really go the whole length of our district here. And I should say, we approached this initially with a lighting walk of our district. So I think the city manager was there, several of our city councilors came out to walk the district at night, look at the opportunities for improvement, and we saw many of them both on the public and private side. And so this was our way of really helping our business owners make the improvements that they saw necessary.
Yep. And then out of that walk too, I'll mention Dominion was with us. So a lot of the problems that we were having with Dominion, they came and fixed after that. I know the city manager had identified some of the public buildings, again, like PAC, and so put lights out there. So it really was a great community walk to where not only did we invest, the city invested, but we also got Dominion Power to move the needle on some of those issues, which was great.
And then just to kind of tease you about some projects that are forthcoming. So this is one of the larger projects that will be improving through this program, Barron's Pub right here on the corner of High and Dinwiddie Street. But if you look at the front of their facade, the lighting across the top only goes halfway down the front. I don't know why, it's just always been that way. But we'll be continuing the lighting all the way down. He's also he's lighting his sign there. There's murals on both sides that will be lit through our design layout, and then improving, this is one of the kitchen access points here that just has a really sort of harsh light industrial fixture that will be replaced to something that's more in line with the district. And here's some of those examples of the lighting fixtures that have been selected and will be going on as part of that improvement program. So that's working really closely with the Historic Design, Downtown Design Review Commission to get appropriate, not just more lighting, but appropriate lighting into the district.
Yep. And then I'll go back. Dinwiddie was pretty important too, because that was identified in the survey, but also in the walk is a really poorly lit street with several businesses on there. So that's why we were really excited to bring a lot of those business owners on board.
Yeah, so that's a really good point. So the lighting that's going on, so this is the Dinwiddie side of Barron's. We also have lighting that is going in on the Dinwiddie side of Longboards, as well as the Dinwiddie side of where Fort Four-Print
Princes,
Sink
yeah.
is there, as well as across the front of Four-Print
Yeah.
Sink, and then doing a security camera initiative with High Street Pizza. So all 4 of those businesses are activating through this program.
Which will also help with parking too, as people park down those side streets so that they're lit up to walk through, which will be great. So now we're going to move to economic vitality. So I just thought it was important for y'all to see, yes, the partnership is in Main Street, working through Main Street for the last year, but over the last 2 years, we've raised $528,000, just over $528,000 total for the partnership, which includes a lot of our accelerator programs, and then you can see part of that was the lighting project, and then a few more that we'll talk about a little bit later in the slides, unlocking capital in the High Street Fest. So again, just to know the overall impact that the partnership's having, not just through Main Street, but also through small business incubation. We are constantly seeking grants to help our small businesses and help them grow, which is also a catalyst for Main Street. And it's one of the reasons that made the partnership such a great, I guess, a nonprofit to partner with Main Street. And one of the reasons they really sought us out and accelerated us through the program was because of some of the incubation of small businesses we were already doing.
Yeah, so we'll get into some of our programmatic things that are happening under Bloom. We've really been leaning into industry-specific programming. So this year we launched a Bloom Healthcare Accelerator. So that was a pilot program that we ran. And really, it came out of looking at who was in our Bloom space, as well as here in the district, the number of home health companies, as well as mental health care companies that are incubating with us and wanting to do really specific programming for those businesses. So in addition to seeing just about everyone complete the program, new jobs created through the program, we also had an unexpected surprise, which was the formation of an alliance of some of the businesses going through the programming. They took a look at really where federal funding priorities were moving towards and wanting to align some of the pillars of their own businesses to be able to access some of the resources they saw coming down that avenue.
Yep, which we were super excited to see that, because that's one of the principles behind doing accelerator programs, is putting businesses, especially when you do cohorts that are tailored around one specific industry, you're putting, groups of folks, groups of entrepreneurs that have the same industry piece, and let them feed off of each other, let them learn off each other, and then even best for this one is, hey, how about we work together to solve a problem, and then write grants together to activate funds. So we were thrilled about that. So we'll be following them and see how they do.
Another program that we launched this last year was a Seed Capital Activator. This was really leaning into a step capital model, taking a look at really small and startup businesses that have not had an opportunity to access an infusion of business capital and getting them on that first rung of capital access. And so we were working with the Kiva program, which offers zero interest loans to commercial borrowers. I think loans up to $5,000,
Yep.
And working with these small businesses to gain access and build out their business credit through the program. And then, of course, our Retail Accelerator, which is another industry-specific program we've had for a couple years now.
Yep, we've been really excited to launch this. And again, this has been supported by EDA and has been fantastic. So taking home makers and bringing them into retail space, giving them education. So we partnered with Retail Alliance on this, and so they did all the education for us, and then gave them a space to actually show their wares and to be able to connect to the market versus just selling online. And the whole idea behind this is to help them launch, and then to help them actually launch into Portsmouth. So to give them what they need to go from being an in-home base just online to hopefully bricks and mortar. So our whole little tagline was clicks to bricks. So figuring out how do you take that online presence and how do you connect to a market base, and how do you have some experiential. Thank you. I can't say the word. Yes. So, and creating that so that you can, really have people come into a space. Like we've got a candle maker, and she has groups all the time. Come in, make your own candle, pick your own scents. So it's been great. Our juices we love. It's called her juice bar, so people are constantly coming in looking for her juices. She uses the commissary kitchen, and we are her retail space in Portsmouth for her juices. And her business has, it's gone wild since then. In fact, she's been able to cut back her hours, and that's the whole idea. A lot of these entrepreneurs are still working 9 to 5, so why the market's been so valuable for them, because we staff it. So they have their presence there. People can get to know their product, get to know them a little bit by their story, but they don't have to work the whole time because they're still bootstrapping these ideas. So they still need their 9 to 5, and the idea is to get them enough sales so that they can give up their 9 to 5 and actually launch out.
And then Bloom Market has launched into another partnership with the Retail Alliance through their Retail Catalyst program. So we're kind of leaning in a little harder with them. Old Town was the first community that they selected to partner with. And that's gaining, again, capital access to these retail businesses. So we have a number of businesses that are either current farmers market businesses, are incubating with us here at Bloom, as well as one property owner that are in the Retail Catalyst program looking to launch their brick and mortar out onto High Street.
And the nice thing with that too, and even with the Bloom Market as we go forward, is we've had a leakage study done through this Retail Catalyst program. So really looking at, okay, what businesses can the district support? And then how can we now attract those businesses and or incubate those businesses specific to the district, specific to the data, to say, hey, this is what's coming in, this is what's leaving, this is what's necessary. So super important to, again, as you're incubating, look at data to make sure you're incubating the right base businesses and to make sure they can be successful. And then our newest grant that we've received, Unlocking Capital, really excited about this. It was a U.S. Main Street grant founded by the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. And so we were selected and awarded $70,000 to actually build capacity for Main Street, which is fantastic, and help us grow the program. So we're real excited about that. We're looking at a couple of different things with that. We're looking to bring on a full-time dedicated SBD staffer. So again, that one-on-one with businesses coming into Bloom, but also anybody in Portsmouth. So, and that's also good to remember too. Like we talk about Bloom, but we are not, anything that we do is not Bloom specific. You do not have to be a member. A lot of programs, you don't even have to be a Portsmouth resident. We are attracting businesses to Portsmouth. So we want you to come, we want you to do business in Portsmouth, and we're hoping that you stay in Portsmouth. So everything we do is open to the public. We have a lot of businesses that are coming in. They don't live in Portsmouth, but they like our space. We have free parking, and they want to open their business in Portsmouth. So it's been fantastic. And so we're really excited to kind of lean into having qualified consultants, and we'll have their whole entire team. So based on the needs of an entrepreneur, we'll have access to their entire team, whether it's a retail person, whether they need financial help. They have specific consultants that specialize. So excited to bring that to Portsmouth. That's going to also help us build capacity, but from what we're doing too, from a standpoint of our programming. And the other piece too is also looking at exploring some sustainable funding models for the district. So we are working with with Hampton Roads Alliance on that, and with economic development. So there'll be more to come on that, but excited to have those programs. The other piece to that that we were real excited to launch as well is these RAPs.
So through Unlocking Capital, we really identified our single biggest goal is to reduce vacancies here in Old Town. And so one of the ways we really wanted to lean into that was showcasing those spaces a little differently. Get rid of the peeling brown paper and the newsprint out of the windows, and really showcase what these spaces could be. So Michelle mentioned our leakage study. We know the types of businesses that should do well here. And so to be able to show them visually to people that are passing by, either on foot or in car. And so I got just a couple designs in here for you. This is the wine bar that we're anticipating at 720 High Street. putting in a design like this gives them cover while they do a build out, builds anticipation for what's coming. And then for spaces that we don't have any plans for just yet.
we'd like plans for.
them. We also have some designs that are being built around that. And so one of the key pieces here is the call to action, these QR codes. We're working with the marketing team to make sure we're directing all of those to economic development. So if somebody's inquiring about a space, we don't want them to land with a leasing agent, find out it's not the right fit, and we lose that contact, right? We want to capture everybody and find them the right fit in Portsmouth. So we're trying to be really strategic about that, and also just improving. This is a building that's been vacant for at least a decade. It has plywood on covering up their glass windows, and so working with that property owner, building a relationship out, and then showcasing their business in terms of the potential is what we're hoping to achieve.
Yeah.
So these are all in the design phase now. We're hoping to see them really soon come to life. And then we're entering into phase 2. So we received the $70,000 grant. That is unlocking additional funding for our district. We're guaranteed a $50,000 pre-development grant. It can scale up to $125,000, which is what we're really hoping to bring in. So keep your fingers crossed for us. But again, around the effort to reduce vacancies on High Street, the goal here is to deploy pre-development funds into a project to determine its feasibility and its path forward. And so right now we're in the process of reviewing several options of how best to use those funds for High Street.
Yep, and it's a grant process, so we've got several folks who have kind of applied through us, and then we've given it to our grant team to look to see what's the best match according to the guidelines that they've set forth in the application. So again, trying to get that, more than the 50 that we're guaranteed. So we're excited about that. And then, it brings us to the promotion side. So again, we've kind of gone through all the 4 points. And real quick, those of you who don't know Ports Events, the partnership started an events company 2008. So we've done things like we started the farmers market, we started First Fridays. Again, just trying to bring visitors into Old Town. When we launched Bloom Co-working in 2019, we kind of shelved Ports Events because, again, just staffing constraints. It was me and one other person, and so couldn't launch, incubator and co-working at the same time as doing First Fridays, farmers markets, and things like that. Events are very time consuming. So we gave both of those long running events to different entities that we thought could benefit from it. So farmers market went to Old Town Business Association, which they in turn then created another company that the Cullens run. So that's been a nice income source for OTBA. And then First Fridays we gave to Portsmouth Supports Public Arts. Again, nice fundraiser for them, and then also still continuing that those events in Portsmouth. So, but fast forward, we did High Street Fest, as you know, in October, and we did that under the lens of Main Street. So again, looking at events a little differently versus, yes, pulling visitors in, but also how can we have an economic impact on the district? So everything through Main Street is done through that economic lens. How is their economic impact? And so we looked at an event differently. How can we lean into the bricks and mortar? So if we shut down the streets, we pulled the DORA permit, which allowed the containers to move throughout the district, but that also means that all of the sales go to the retail licenses. And so we encouraged all businesses to put food on the street and to bring their activities out on the street. And so we'll give you a little recap if you didn't come.
No, a lot of you were here. Yeah, there we go.
So again, the total, just to kind of go over some numbers so you know, like, yes, it was an investment, but we also saw some return on that investment. Total production cost was $142,000. So that, again, was private-public. The city stepped up very largely for this in terms of marketing, city sponsorship with closing down the streets, police, and things like that. So we also raised money for that as well, corporate sponsors, and then a lot of private in-kind. So again, collectively, all together, that's what it took to run the event. But when you look at the money spent in marketing, we did establish a strong brand, and then we had a huge campaign, so got the word out, but it also got Portsmouth out, right? It wasn't just a High Street Fest. It was more talking about Portsmouth and Old Town and why you should come to Old Town. And so you can see we generated $2.3 million total impressions. And so the Davis agency did that for us, which again was great because they're branding for the city. They are the city's agency, so everything corresponds with what the city's doing, which we feel is really important, right? We want to support the city. We don't want to be out there branding something different. We want to work with the city and make sure we're all branding the same thing. The trend data we were super excited about, so we were able to use Placer AI, which hopefully the city will own soon. We're hoping that. I know marketing and Peter's been trying for that. It's fantastic, the little glimpse that we have gotten through Placer, so put a plug in for that. But we were really excited, almost 7,000 visitors for High Street. So one of the largest Saturdays that the district has seen, 2 times the average visits, and then you can see just on the third Saturday, we were trending down in October, and so that really gave a boost. So it was great data. The economic impact we were most excited about. So again, excited to have 7,000 people on the street, but did they spend money? And yes, they did. So we had 105 street vendors, 85 doing sales. They reported about 97 customers and an average of $600 in sales, and then total engagement that they had. Why that's important, that shows that, okay, yes, they were vendors. A lot of them were Portsmouth-based vendors, not all of them, but also, too, bringing people down, they were spending money. So again, if we are filling some vacancies and we're using our leakage study, meaning they will spend money when you bring people down into the district. The brick and mortar businesses, they averaged 118% increase over what they had usually done. Bars and restaurants, 124% increase. And so here's just a little bit. Again, like Beer Garden, the best day they had done was 6,000, and during High Street Fest they were close to 12,000. So the numbers were incredible for our bricks and mortar. They really were.
And then Hello Sweeties is another example where year over year she saw a 357% increase in her sales compared to that same day a year
before that. Yep. And then just some little testimonies. Again, I won't read them to you, but what we heard from brick and mortar after brick and mortar, owner after owner, was this was the best day they had had. It exceeded their expectations. Most everybody had already done their best sales day by 11 and 12 o'clock, and they had the whole rest of the day to go. Cure is probably my favorite because they outperformed Norfolk location for the first time ever, hour by hour. So we were like super excited about that. So, which Norfolk is their longest standing store out of their 4 localities. So. Yep, so we are planning to do it again, October 10th. And again, why the branding was so important and the marketing piece, because it is a platform for the city to use. So the city is using the High Street Fest in conjunction with Sale 250, which is great. So plan is to pull the DORA permit again and then create that atmosphere, leaning into our bricks and mortars again and celebrating the 250. So that's why it was so important that the city leaned into this, that created branding that they could use as well, that and that we can use, and we can use it over and over again.
And then just a bit about, again, just tying this right back to having a walkable downtown that's full of economic vitality. That's our vision for where Old Town's going and why we're in this program.
Why we're in this space, So, we want to what can I say? Yeah, thank y'all for your time. Any
Happy to answer any questions.
questions?
We also left you a little present today,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
you can rock the,
Yep,
the
and
Main
like,
Street.
yep, we're hoping eventually we'll have Portsmouth specific, but
Yeah.
we're not quite there yet with the name, so.
Councilwoman Thomas, ma'am, you have the floor.
Thank you. This was excellent. Just really nice to see. You know, you hear about some of the things with Portsmouth Partnership, but like I just learned about the Bloom Healthcare Accelerator. I think that's excellent. Of course, we know Bloom Marketplace. Love going in there. Really good work. We were just talking about High Street Festival as a council. I forgot where we were, but just talking about how positive it was. I just want to make a note that not only, I'm sure, it generated, you know, the economic benefit that you just went over, but it was just a great way to get out and meet your neighbors or people you don't know. We said having the tables out on the street from the restaurant, you know, you sit in a chair that someone else is sitting there, you get to talk and really learn people's stories, and so that was really, really good. I do want to ask, my question is, you mentioned this leakage study. Give me a little bit more background. Like, so it's looking at businesses that we have a gap, where we have a gap at? What is that really?
So what we did with the leakage studies, we put a pinpoint into the district. I think we actually used the Commodore as kind of like the central point, and then they pull a radius out and they look at where money is being spent not in your district, which is sort of the opportunity for businesses inside of your district.
Yep.
Does it go to like where people are spending money in other cities, or just?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yep, and we can share that. Economic Development has it, so it was done through Retail Alliance and our partnership with them.
Yeah, I think that would be good to know as we're tying together even the waterfront Crawford development.
Yes.
And lending that to what the future High Street will look like with Main Street. I think that information will be good to see. So thank
Oh, yeah,
you.
absolutely, yeah.
Vice Mayor Moody, sir, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. Excellent presentation. You know, a lot of times we hear about these things, but to really see some of the economic feedback from the business owners, that's great. Sounds like they're energized with the program. A few things. You mentioned signage. You know, as y'all know, when we went to Greenville, how the signage was uniform. You could look down the street and see what type of business it was. Is that something that's going to happen through Main Street?
I think there's different ways to incentivize that. I mean, one of the things we saw in Greenville is there was signage that was parallel along this
Yes.
front, and then they had perpendicular signage that hung out, which is what really kind of caught your eye as you were walking around. I think one is really aimed towards drivers and motorists, and another driven towards people walking on the street. We're just starting to get our transformation strategies. I think we're kind of working in advance, right? The lighting initiative was just something that we were ready to go, and so we did. So I think that can definitely be part of future programming for us, but nothing firm.
So which brings me to, what phase would you say Main Street is in? I know early on it was the planning and strategy
And
phase.
we're still in that and in the accreditation stage. So we're kind of confusing because we got fast-tracked a little bit. So like the unlocking capital, we really shouldn't have been eligible for, honestly, because we're not an accredited Main Street. But because of Bloom and some of the other pieces that we were doing in our lighting initiative, and already the relationships we had with the city, they went ahead and let us apply for that, and we actually got it, so, which has been fantastic. So yes, we're still in that planning phase and getting the accreditation phase, but we're also in a programmatic stage too, and the transformation strategy that they just lays out for the next 3 years strategies as to what you want to see improvements, how to get that done. So yeah, I think the answer to your question is we would love to take on that signage piece and work with the city and see what we can do to make that happen.
Terrific. And the success of Bloom, obviously the goal is for the entrepreneurs there to go to the brick and mortar stage. How many have actually done that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, because we've got over 200 entrepreneurs. I know we've had at least 20 come out of Bloom, and so it's interesting because we're kind of a mix between an incubator space and a co-working space. So we encourage, like we do wraparound services, we're giving education and encouraging people to grow, right? But we don't force them out either. So a true incubator, you get 6 months, you get a year, and then you're done. You launch or fail. We baby step a little bit more than that. So we've got some people who we're edging out, and trying to get them. We're expanding offices, and they're starting to look, and so we help them along the way. A lot of our entrepreneurs, again, 97% of them are minority or women-owned entrepreneurs, so they don't have access to a lot of the capital that other entrepreneurs have, like when you go to the 757 Collab, when they're high growth entrepreneurs. So they get access to capital that our entrepreneurs don't have, so they take a little bit longer. But again, we've had 20 over the last couple years, which is pretty successful, to where they've gone in bricks and mortar or other just larger office space.
So there is no set time?
There's not, no. And we've got some folks that are true co-working. They work for corporate America, and they don't want to work from home. And so they come into our space, but they add a lot of value to our entrepreneurs, because again, they have a different lens of business than our entrepreneurs do, so our entrepreneurs can learn from them. So yeah, we're definitely a mix. And we do not our retail accelerator, we try to accelerate people out, and our accelerator programs are clearly just a set time. But as far as just co-working space, and they can stay as long as they want. We've talked about possibly using incremental price increases to kind of get them to move along a little bit.
And also to nudge businesses up to paying market rent,
Yep.
right? Just to kind of do that gently hand them off into the.
So that it's not such a jump, because we are way under market, and that's to reduce barriers of entry for businesses. So that was part of our model. It's part of our grant platform. That is why we get grants, and that is why we can stay under market value.
And my last question, I know the plans, Market Street is going to help, like the Churchland and the Craddock. Can we expect anything there soon?
Well, I don't know about soon, no. And and again, I don't know whether, and that's to be determined whether it would even be the partnership, right? Like, we're creating this framework, but I mean, in all honesty, it needs to be grassroots, right? So if there's a community group in Churchland, let's say, or in Afton, who, is dedicated to that area, then we've kind of got the playbook for them. Like, okay, here's what you do. Your organization starts this, and this is what you need, and here's the tools, and we can walk them through that and help guide them. But whether that should be the partnership or that other organization, I think that depends on the area and what their needs are and what their strengths are. We can, that's the nice thing, is we lend a hand, and we can be their guide to that. Here's all the things you need, but we don't necessarily have to be in charge of that, right? Like, somebody else can do that. That's a
Have
little
any of those
invested.
areas reached out to
Not
you?
yet.
Not yet.
And one thing I'll say too is, we've worked with Virginia Main Street to help define the space of our district, the geography of our district, and have been very intentional about having a real focused and concentrated effort on a small space. We can continue to grow our High Street district as our organization grows in strength and resources, but we really want to be hyper-focused and concentrated in these initial stages.
Okay.
Yeah, just so you can see the progress. But that's also their framework too, right? Like, that's why, you don't start with the whole city. You start with,
Right.
Your biggest impact, your biggest economic impact, and that's usually
Sure.
that small business district, and then let other areas see the success, and then feed them and help them have success too.
Okay. Very, very good.
Oh, thanks.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Councilman Hubel, then
Yeah, thanks, Mayor.
Councilwoman Bryant.
Thank you for presenting.
Sure.
This is really what we, I think, dreamed about as we were riding the bus back from Greenville, this to take off the way it has. So well done to you guys for leading this effort. I'm going to start with sharing some information to my colleagues, but it ties into to the Main Street effort. So this morning, the PPIC voted to collaborate with money with the city and with American Cruise Lines to install some infrastructure into the downtown waterfront, with the goal being that we encourage American Cruise Lines to make Portsmouth a starting and end point. Right now, it's just a stop-off point. Important because a starting and end point means
Hotel beds.
hotels and restaurants. And so agreement today to set that in motion.
That's great.
You mentioned the facility improvement grants that the EDA manages. I'll share that at the last EDA meeting during the grant brief, the EDA set aside $350,000 this year to make those grant investments. That money was claimed halfway through the fiscal year. So $350,000 to do facility improvements is already been consumed, and we got half a year left to go. And basically, because of the demand signal, we're telling everybody that's continuing to submit grant applications, sorry, come back after the 1st of July. So kind of going back to the Greenville discussion, where they told us they wanted to invest in the people who have been there with them. I think maybe we ought to have a discussion as we build the budget to take a look at is $350,000 the right amount of money to set aside for that, particularly given the demand signal that we've seen. And I don't know how much of that demand signal is tied into the work that you all are doing that are kind of creating some extra demand, but if this is going to go, we need to make sure that we're encouraging with resources.
And I think those grant fundings are citywide,
Right.
not Old Town specific.
It is, yeah, absolutely.
That's right.
So,
Yeah.
but it'd be interesting to know, and maybe we can find out from Mr. Donahue, how much of that grant money went into the High
Just
Street
so lighting.
corridor.
Oh, the High Street corridor, yeah, and then the lighting project was very little because
Yeah,
those projects
yeah.
were small. But what I will say is, I think some of the, again, as we're out talking to businesses and as we have business owners come into Bloom, we talk about that grant a lot because it is a great opportunity. So that has definitely had an influx, and
Yeah.
without a doubt, because we send people there a lot, especially through our accelerator programs. When they're looking for money, they're talking about bricks and mortar. Well, this is why you should open in Portsmouth. This is a great opportunity.
Right.
So,
I appreciated your information regarding the low interest or no interest loan capital thing. EDA has done a similar thing. And so I'm sitting there, this is the first I've heard that you all are doing that as well. And I'm left wondering, so are we competing with each other, or are we collaborating with each other? And how are we communicating to the small business community? Hey, if you go the EDA route and there's no money left in the pot, go to the partnership, or vice versa.
And just to be clear, so we're not a lender, so we were working with Kiva, which is a program administered through Bridging Virginia locally, and so it was just connecting folks to
Yeah.
that.
Yep.
But to your point, we are interested not with competing, but layering capital in programs that are complementary, and
Yeah.
that being a good thing for entrepreneurs.
yeah, and we've talked about that with EDA. But yeah, no, we just educated, so that our capital access was pure education. But by going through the program and going through the application, they got, their application was looked at ahead of some of other applications through Kiva and Bridging Virginia.
Yeah.
And just getting them lender ready, that was the other thing too. There are just so many businesses that aren't lender ready, and so going through a program to say this is what you need, which also will help EDA, because again, as we educate, they're getting a more sophisticated business out of it.
Okay. And my last comment has to do with the lighting project. So awesome. Every time I come downtown after dark now, it's remarkable to me the difference in how things are lit up. The lights are working. The place has brightened up quite a bit. And I appreciated your comments around the investment on Dinwiddie. So that's going to help one little side street for parking. We need to work on other side streets for parking, so I'm thinking Washington Street and Middle Street in particular. And I think when we walked, we talked about lighting up the side of 206 High Street to brighten up that pathway back to the Middle Street garage, which is still pretty darn dark.
Yeah.
And so I don't know where we stand on that, but I think, okay, so maybe we need, as we're building the upcoming budget, to bump that up higher on the list of to-dos. And in fact, I've talked to the parking authority about maybe working with you to schedule an after-dark walk along some of those side streets back to our parking areas after the weather warms up a little bit, and getting Dominion down there with us so that we can figure out where else do we need to be working with Dominion to help light the place up. Because whatever we decide to do about parking on High Street, there ain't enough parking on High Street. We gotta push parking off the main corridor, and the only way, I think, from the feedback of the businesses along High Street, that's going to work is if we make those areas lit enough so that they feel safe enough so that people aren't going to only park along High Street. So anyway, thanks for the brief. It's really good.
Absolutely.
Councilwoman Bryant, you have the floor.
Thanks, Mayor, and thank you both. It was a wonderful brief. I'm really excited by the fact that, like you said, we can take this template and apply it to other parts of the city. And I think that that's something that's definitely down the road, but conversations that we should be having regularly to get other people across the city informed and maybe on board with this. It creates more ownership, certainly, by having other groups take the same role, but for other parts of the city. So that's really exciting because it becomes all of ours rather than just the downtown. Curious about your conversations with folks who own vacant buildings on High Street, because that's certainly something that a lot of people are very eager to solve, and it's, I'm sure, very complicated. So what can you tell us about those conversations?
Yeah, well, one thing I'll say initially is the Main Street framework has been great in just starting to establish the connection. So like when you even try and figure out who a property owner is, it's owned by an LLC, and you're contacting a registered agent, and you're just kind of in this circle trying to even get a hold of someone. But through some of these initiatives, we've been able to offer some carrots into that. Like, hey, we'd love to wrap the front of your building. We want to invest in your space. And that's really helped to open the doors to some conversations. The other thing that we've noticed in having those kind of heart-to-heart with like, hey, you know, this has been sitting vacant for like a decade now, like what's the plan? There's a real emotional attachment that some of these business owners have to their space. They have a vision for where they want it to go, but for whatever reason have not been able to actualize on that. And so, you know, we showcased one that, you know, we're wrapping the front of. We've seen plans that were drawn up a long time ago, working with them on some roof repair. Like, I think it's not going to be a quick fix, and I don't think there's going to be one path that works for all of those property owners. It's really individual trust building and figuring out kind of what their end goal is and how we can match that with our goals for the district.
Yeah. But also too, like Liz said, opening up conversation, but we can also have conversations that economic development can't have, right? That y'all can't have. Like, hey, you know what? We're investing in other properties. You need to do something with this, right? This is not okay, and we don't think this is okay. And so, but we do it gently. But you know, and a really good example, I think, is Jefferson. So the owner of the little soda shop, like right across from us on the 700 block of High Street, like, oh my gosh, just want someone to take that building and redo it, right? So he's in the Retail Catalyst program. So that was through, you know, meeting him, conversation, talking about wraps, talking about lighting. So again, like Liz said, that carrot for him to actually have conversations with us, and then we're like, okay, well, you've got a plan for that, so here's an avenue that can help you make this happen. And so he's got real deadlines that Retail Alliance has
yeah.
given him, so we'll see if he comes through about emptying that building. It's a big old storage unit, emptying that out, creating, the front and back into a store, and so we'll
The other
see, but
thing-
we're encouraging him to do it.
I'll say too is for some of the most problematic businesses, what we hear from other districts is they sort of get shamed into improving their buildings,
Yeah.
right? So when you start to see individual properties invest and really kind of tune things up, they get kind of shamed into being the problem on the block. And so we're told that also
Yeah.
works.
Yep.
So.
Well, thank you.
So we're
for-
hoping, yes.
Thank you for playing that role.
Yeah, absolutely. That's, one of our biggest goals, vacancies.
Go ahead, Councilman Tillage, then Councilwoman Thomas,
Thank you.
since you haven't spoken yet.
So one thing I hear a lot when I speak to people from outside the city, that, they comment on how nice and how beautiful and how surprised they are that Old Town downtown Portsmouth is so nice, right? So my comment kind of piggybacks off of High Street Festival and having increased foot traffic. As part of this Main Street America, I know High Street Fest was obviously like a pilot thing we did that has now become hopefully an annual thing. Is there things that that maybe you all have thought about to maybe not on such a larger scale, but maybe something to do to activate people throughout the year? And then also maybe in some of like the common areas, doing more activations with art, history, things like that to kind of get people just to walk down High Street and also along the side streets.
Yeah.
100%. So those are the conversations that we're having with marketing, with tourism, about just that, right? Like High Street Fest is a shot in the arm. It's a one day. I will say it probably has ripple effects, right? We brought people into the city. They had a really positive experience. They're more likely to come back again. And then just leaning into the data, right? So we're looking at where people are coming from, where they were before coming to us, where they went after, how long they stayed on High Street, using those sort of metrics to inform the types of events, amenities, experiences, activities that we should be having on the street to keep them coming back more
Yep.
frequently. So 100%.
Yeah, and then the nice thing is like it's a monthly conversation, right? Like, so in the Main Street meetings and all of those people are present, like, so what else can we do? And like you said, not always on a large scale, right? Because it takes a lot to produce that, so we can't do that every week, but what can we do? Yeah.
Yeah, because I think one thing I enjoy when I go out of towns to different downtowns is you'll hear music or you'll
Yeah.
hear you'll see art on the side of the street or people just outside just enjoying the downtown. They may not necessarily be shopping, but they're the downtown looking, which obviously hopefully will lead them to shop.
Right.
But like you say, just getting people the presence there, I think is good. And of course, on Saturdays with the farmers market, I mean that's always excellent.
Yeah.
But what do we do after that 1 o'clock time
Right.
frame?
And then, we just know too, like, and then how do you attract them to stay? So that's the biggest piece, right? Like the farmer's market's getting them there, but then we know from data they're leaving. So what do we need to do to, to keep them longer? And that's one of those data points, is to, once you attract them to the district, how do you keep them there and how do you get their length of visit to be a little bit longer. And that's for visitors and residents, honestly, it's for both.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Thomas.
Yes, thank you. I wrote down what I wanted to ask you, then forgot. But I'm just going to go stay on that one point that Councilwoman Bryant brought up. So I used to live in Alexandria, Virginia, and on the weekend, to that point, going down to Old Town, Alexandria, you might go to a farmer's market down there, you might eat, and then you're going to stay because there's retail, there's shops, there's antiques, there's a bunch of other stuff, there's spas to keep you in that area, right? So to Councilwoman Bryant's point about the empty shops, and I know you said you've been working with those owners, but if those owners do they own the shop? They mostly own those spaces,
They own the
right?
buildings.
And some of them might not want to be landlords, so they don't have to lease those spaces if they don't have their own business that they want to see in there. Are you getting some of that feedback too, where they're just not comfortable even leasing the space if they don't have their own business ideas?
That might be the folks that aren't responding to.
Yes, yeah, but
Okay.
the ones that we've talked to, like, they have a vision.
Yeah.
So they
Okay.
bought that building and they've been holding on to it and they've got a vision for it, and there it sits. And it's to help them then realize their vision, right? Like, okay, if this is what you want and this matches the leakage study, so what do we need to do to get you over the finish line? What pieces are you missing?
Go ahead. I'm
Well,
sorry.
and so kind of to your point where I think maybe you're going with this is downtowns will use kind of that carrot and stick approach, right? So you can incentivize things that you want folks to do, but also, perhaps leaving a space sitting vacant is also something that you need that stick to
Right.
also encourage behavior. And
So-
so that,
Yeah, we're hoping, like, the municipality is looking at that too, like, okay, if we've got something that's vacant, so, what do you do on a tax basis? What do you, for the use, and then putting in permitting and zoning to not allow it, right? Like, not allow you to just to use the
storage unit.
Storage unit, but that would be on,
That's kind of where I was
yeah,
going to go.
and
Okay,
we're,
great.
yep. And we're hoping that's, what the municipality will do and step up as far as, and again, that's what Main Street's so good about, right? Like, so we're all talking together, and so here's the things we're doing. What can you do as a municipality to make sure that these things happen and move forward?
Yeah, okay. Thank you. And then the other one, vacancies, port events. Oh, ports events. You said ports events is a component of Portsmouth Partnership.
It's an affiliate, yes.
Okay. But you partner with the city on those events.
Yes, we did. Like High Street Fest, yes. So the other ones we did not. So High Street Fest really is the first event that we've actually produced with the city. We've come alongside and helped the city. Like, we worked Sunset Thursdays forever and did all the alcohol for Sunset Thursdays. We helped produce a couple events. Well, I shouldn't say that's the first one, because we actually helped Shagging on High, and there were a couple other bigger city events that we helped produce.
just thinking-
But this one
The big one.
was
Okay.
yes, that is the biggest partnership we've had with the city, where the city really went in, all in with
There's
us.
some opportunity to Councilman Tillich's point, to expand and even maybe do more partnership with the city to bring some of those kind of activations towards downtown.
Yeah.
So, and then lastly, I wrote down here, create neighborhood ambassadors. And to your point about bringing the concepts that we're learning and employing through the Main Street program to other areas in Portsmouth, that is great. The issue that I see with that is that other areas don't have a Portsmouth partnership.
Right.
And so I don't know if we could do like a train-the-trainer or establishing like a group that kind of helps other organizations or partners in those other neighborhoods establish maybe something like a Portsmouth partnership. We have civic leagues, but they don't act as a partnership. They're not,
Yeah.
You all are going out and getting grants and using data and really implementing this program. And I see some opportunities for us to bring it to other neighborhoods, but the infrastructure and the organization, I think, is a piece that we will have to focus on as well. But I like the idea of taking those concepts to place in other neighborhoods.
Oh yeah, we would definitely help with that, right? And then if it works for that locality too, let's like take Afton Square for instance, and they don't have a partnership, right? But want to lean into that relationship, then absolutely. We just don't want to go in and take over,
do that,
right?
right.
Like, and hey, here we are, and we're going to do this for you. It's more, hey, we want this as a community. Can you help us get there? So it's kind of a different way, a different approach, right? So, but no, we'll do anything we can to help other areas make sure that they get what they want as well.
Thank you.
So look, right in line with what we talked about a long time ago. Where Portsmouth is a city that moves you, and we are moving in the right direction. I just want to say that, as the vision continues to unfold, this is exactly what we're doing. When the Main Street folks came and we did the walkthrough and we did the tour, one of the things that the young lady was saying to me, who was with Main Street USA, she was like, Mayor, you guys have an amazing city, but you got to create a little bit more of wayfinding, right? Because people need to know where to go and how to do it. I think what we have put together with the Main Street program, with the partnership, this is what we've always envisioned. A city working collaboratively with other stakeholders to bring about the desired result. What we are all working toward is our downtown is everybody's neighborhood. right? And so you just said that in putting this together, we're going to take the model and we can drop this model in other communities. I was talking to James Overton, who lives in the Truxton area, and we were talking about this very thing. We can take things that we've learned and engage with citizens in the community like they've done in their community to create a community space. Well, how about we open that a little bit more and bring people to work on housing opportunities and other opportunities? That model can be expanded. We are a historic maritime port, and we will be the festival city. And it's because as we come together sharing with private sector and public sector, building those relationships, that's how we're going to get to be the best frickin' downtown in America. That's what the goal is, but we've got to be intentional. One of the things we talked about was the leakage study, right? And in the leakage study, it indicated, and correct me if I'm wrong, there's a potential. You know, we just lost one of our older restaurants in the downtown, which was a hub for people.
It was.
The reality is, in the leakage study, it says we got room for about 12 more restaurants.
We do.
Well, see, what we need to be doing as a team, we need to be huddling up and saying, who do we want to bring? And they don't have to be big box places. They can be mom and pops. I mean, Cafe Europa, a great opportunity. People talk to me all about, I wish Cafe Europa was back. But at the end of the day, we can bring back whatever we desire. That's what we have our hands a hold of. And with your partnership and with everybody working, I'm just excited. I wake up every morning, and when I walk downtown, I can see the vision. I can see the stores opening up. I can see more density. I can see more pride. And as we create more opportunities and we get stuff done, like that fountain that's getting ready to get done, that fountain will be a focal point. People underestimate a little thing as a fountain. But when we get that fountain done and we invite the whole city out to celebrate that achievement, what is it going to do? It's going to create a focal point, a destination. But it's also going to say to Portsmouth, we're different. And that's what's going to drive us. So thank you, guys.
Yeah.
Keep up the great work. We're ecstatic, and we're glad to be partners.
Thank you.
all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Liz. Thank you, Michelle. Great ladies to work with. Find them easy to deal with, and all the things that we do. Excited about October 10th.
Yeah.
That was a great event we had, and I'm excited to do it again.
4 days, right? The next festival will be 4 days.
The one
June.
for June will
Right.
be. Yes, right.
Right, that one will be, and then the other festival, right.
Right. Now, one thing that kind of came to my attention, I'm not sure if we really thought about this, where, Main Street goes from Water to Effingham. Link goes from Chestnut to 264. But what about Chestnut to Effingham? There's a block there. It's kind of left out of that whole picture, you know what I mean? So as we're developing these things, we got to make sure we give that block a little bit of love, or we're gonna miss an opportunity there. So just keep that in mind as we press on.
Amen.
Mr. Ben McFarland, he is the Chief Resilience Officer for HRPDC, and he's going to talk to us about protecting communities through flood risk management planning. Ben, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate you being here.
Well, good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council members, Manager Carter. Really appreciate the opportunity to come and talk to you today. Really excited to hear about some of the economic resilience activities that are underway in the city today. Tonight I'm going to be talking about some of the coastal resilience efforts that we have underway in the region. I'm going to talk a bit about our regional coastal resiliency program that we have at the PDC, and then talk some more about coastal storm risk management studies, partnerships with the Army Corps of Engineers, and then some opportunities we have working with the state to bring in new investments into the region. So for those of you who don't know much about the Planning District Commission, we're the regional planning agency for Southeastern Virginia. We work with all the communities from Virginia Beach in the east all the way out west to Southampton County, James City County, and then up north to Gloucester County. So we work with a diverse range of communities. Portsmouth, obviously, one of our most important partners, and really, again, excited to be here to talk to you and answer questions you may have about some of these efforts that we have underway here in the region. So our program at the PDCs is just one of the many different programs we have: housing, economics, planning. The one I'm working in the Water Resources Department there, so coastal resiliency is part of that. At the top of our program, we have our board, and I want to recognize Mayor Glover. He's our board chairman. Really appreciate his leadership and service, and also Manager Carter for being on our board as well, and other members of the council over the years that have been part of that board and provided the guidance and leadership that we need at the staff level to help inform our work program and what the priorities our localities have to then really make their way into our work program to tell us at the staff level what we're doing. In addition to the board, which provides that high-level oversight and also approval of our work program and our budget, we have over the years had a designated coastal resilience subcommittee that's been comprised of elected officials from some of the cities and counties who have really try to take to pay some special attention to some of these issues, mostly at the legislative, state issues, federal level issues, but the bulk of our work is done through our Coastal Resiliency Committee. This is a committee that's comprised of representatives at the staff level from all of our jurisdictions. I want to highlight participation from Ms. Russell and her staff in the planning department, and also Mr. Wright and Mr. Bodner from the engineering department, a really instrumental partnership that we have and support from those staff and other localities from around the region that really helps to let us do what we can to then bring that assistance, that technical assistance back to localities and come and do presentations like this and bring information to you all so that you're better equipped and better informed to make the kinds of decisions that you want to make every day for your community. And then we have a designated staff. As I mentioned, I'm in the Water Resources Department. We have a few others that are part of our resilience team. Whitney Catchmark, she is our principal water resources engineer. She is the lead of all the water resources department programs. Again, I'm the chief resilience officer, and then we have Emma Corbett as well, who's a resilience planner. And this is the team. This is who does the resilience work for the HRPDC. We do sometimes share resources, and we partner up with other departments. Again, I mentioned the locality staff that we work with very frequently. But it's a small team, but we're small but mighty. I think we bring a lot of value to the region and to our individual localities as well. What we do, we work on a variety of issues. We help develop policies so that you all have something to consider when thinking about how to become more resilient from a flooding and from climate change perspective. We help coordinate efforts with our state and local and federal partners. In the past, we've done some specific work with the city of Portsmouth. You may be familiar with the joint land use study that was completed several years ago. We were the project manager for that because that was a joint effort between Portsmouth and Chesapeake. We also coordinate an outreach campaign at the regional level, getfloodfluent.org, trying to get people to buy flood insurance. Flood insurance is the best way that individuals can protect themselves and their property from the risks of flooding, and so that's been a key part of our program for several years now. And then also we have, on occasion, we have specific projects that we implement, and one I want to highlight right now, just briefly, is that we're in the process of installing roadway flooding sensors across the region. There will be 3. We have 15 localities that opted into this. That was funded by a grant from the Community Flood Preparedness Fund. And so Portsmouth, as well as the other cities and counties that are participating in that, will be getting 3 of these sensors installed on some critical roadways in the city over the next several months. And those will be transmitting data live to Waze users, but also putting that information up online so that anybody can access that data, whether they're driving or whether they're not. But really excited about that regional program and something that we hope to expand. So Army Corps of Engineers, feasibility studies. These are very, very important. A feasibility study, or a 3x3x3 study, as it is sometimes known, is how the Corps identifies water resources projects for construction. The way this works is that you go through this federal process, and if you do that, that unlocks potential federal investment in this type of infrastructure. And if you don't follow this process, you don't go through this process, that source of funding is walled off to you. And so we're at the PDC real big cheerleaders of this program. We think it's a great opportunity for our communities. That 3x3x3, what that means is just it's the standard model. I say standard, but there's all these models are made to be broken in some ways. But at least the idea is that it takes 3 years to complete a study. It's $3 million total funding cap. That's both the federal and the non-federal side of things. And it only has to go through 3 levels of Corps coordination. So the district, division, and headquarters. Doesn't have to go above that to get approval. And as I mentioned, these studies are the first step on the pathway to getting that significant level of funding. And I say significant, I mean tens or hundreds of millions of dollars potentially for different flood risk management projects in the region. So what these require is, first off, is authorization from Congress. This is through a Water Resources Development Act. It's an act that's passed every 2 years, hopefully by Congress, that identifies specific projects or specific areas that are eligible for these studies. Once it gets authorization, there's a process to actually get put into the Corps' annual work program. So that's another step that we have to take to get selected for the funding. So just authorization doesn't guarantee anything. That just kind of puts you in the queue, and then you get put into the work program once they actually find the money at the Corps level to pay for the study. And then there's a commitment of matching funds from the non-federal sponsor, whether that's the state, whether that's a city, a planning district, that there are different levels, different opportunities or possibilities for who that non-federal sponsor might be. But that commitment, that's the last step. Once the Corps lines up the money, then there's a clock for how long it takes for that non-federal sponsor to also line up their share of the money before the study can move forward. At the end of the day, what these studies produce is a chief's report. There is a report that the Army Corps of Engineers, the Chief of Engineers, submits to Congress, which says that these are the projects that we recommend that have that federal interest and why the Congress should allocate additional funding to pay for design and construction. This is not a slow process, or not a fast process. It's a, when we talk about study authorization, that's just step 2 of step 17 to get to the point where you're actually done with the construction and you're at the point where you're maintaining that infrastructure over time. There's a lot of work that goes into getting through this process, years in many cases, to get from step 1, which is just identifying the problem, all the way to the end of the road where the non-federal sponsors takes over maintenance. And so I'm not going to go through all of these, but I do want to highlight those first 5 there are the ones where are involved in the feasibility study. That's that first kind of batch of steps that it takes to get from where you identify your problem, your risk, and why the federal government should care about your local water resources problem, to the point where you actually have that final report, that then you can use that to set yourself up for funding for construction. So the feasibility study process includes these main 4 steps here. The first is scoping. This is where you would meet with the Corps. Whichever district staff is working, you may think that we will only work with the Norfolk district here. Norfolk district has been farmed out to other regions of the country to do work. There's a possibility that we might get staff from other district to come in here as well, but it's likely that the Norfolk district would be our partner in this, to work out with the locality and kind of what gets to go into that study. And a lot of that is dependent on funding. So I mentioned before that the 3x3x3, there's a $3 million cap. Over the years, the Corps has found that this model doesn't necessarily work as well. $3 million does not go nearly as far as it used to. And so there are options and opportunities to expand the scope beyond what that minimum $3 million would require or would allow. At the end of the day, though, that's where that negotiation takes place between the non-federal sponsor and the Corps to align the amount of funding that's available with the desired items that you would want to include in your scope. And once that's done, the Corps, the district staff, would proceed with the initial evaluation of the different things that you're including in the project. You finish your alternatives milestone. That's the kind of comes up with the different suite of different types of projects or measures that you would undertake, and then move on. Once you complete that effort, then you move on to the tentatively selected milestone, which is what you come up with this plan that says this is what we think we're going to do. This is we've evaluated all the options. And now we're going to pick this one and we're going to proceed with that one. Then that goes through an additional level of analysis with the Corps. The agency, the Corps, makes a decision about whether or not they're going to proceed, they're going to move forward with that, and then that results, it goes through a review board process, and then that chief's report gets signed. So that's a long way of saying that this is a long and drawn-out process that involves a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of other resources by both the Corps and the non-federal sponsor, whoever that sponsor might be, and other partners, to get to where you have that final report. And why is this important? Well, without this study, without this report, you're not eligible to get construction funding from the Corps of Engineers through a Water Resources Development Act. And that's, I think, what we're all after here, that we consider Hampton Roads to be critically important, not just to our localities and to the residents that live throughout the region, but also to the state and to the nation. Obviously, it goes without saying here in Portsmouth that the military presence here in Hampton Roads is critical, is large, that provides that national kind of standing for why we as a region are important and why we deserve to have these resources allocated to us. But we do have to go through these steps first. And, we think about, I guess, how much money are we actually talking about here? FY 2022, I think we all remember, IIJA, a lot of big funding that came through from Congress, that one-time funding source. So that one's the outlier here. But on average, for flood risk or coastal storm risk management projects, the construction funding on a yearly basis totals approximately $500 million to $700 million per year. For that, that's for the whole nation. But that's like every year there's that much money that the Corps is spending on these types of projects. That this is the kind of, these studies line you up to potentially get a share of that amount of funding one day. It's a long time coming. So where are we? Well, in Virginia, I apologize for the blurry graph there. The good news is that we actually have, we previously worked with the Norfolk District several years ago to get authorization for coastal Virginia to have these types of studies included in the Water Resource Development Act. I want to say it was the 2018 WRDA that we put that into. And so that was, a big step. Instead of each locality having to go and work with its partners and its delegation to go through Congress and get individual authorization, that we got authorization for all of coastal Virginia, which tees up these studies to be done for anybody in Virginia that can really get into the work plan, which is the next kind of step, right? It's the authorization, again, is one thing. Getting in that work plan is another thing entirely. Hampton, actually, this is, just want to update here that Hampton and Virginia Beach are both in the process of completing feasibility studies. The Hampton study also includes part of Pocosin. I'm going to get into a little bit more detail about that project here in a bit. A little bit of a cautionary tale. And really, I think, for all of us, we know, obviously the Norfolk project probably gets the most press. It's the furthest along. They're in the middle of they're technically in construction right now, but they're at the very, very beginning of that process, still designing some of the phases of that project. And then Virginia Beach is also completing a feasibility study as well. I would say, just before I get into the details on any of those projects, this has been a learning experience for all of us here in Hampton Roads. Norfolk may have been the first city to proceed with one of these feasibility studies, but they're all kind of. This is a challenging process for the best equipped communities. And it has been, I think, for us here at the PDC, to see how each of these cities has proceeded, but we're learning new things from each one. And I hope by the time we get to the final study that we might be able to do for Hampton Roads, that we'll have this down and we won't run into any more hiccups or any more challenges. I'm doubtful that will occur, but the good news is that for communities that aren't already on this list, that there's an opportunity to learn from the experience of those other communities, and I think that puts the rest of Hampton Roads into a good spot when it comes to potentially getting one of these studies done for their communities. So I mentioned the Norfolk Coastal Storm Risk Management Study. This was the first one. Authorization, this study, it's interesting. So after Hurricane Sandy hit the New York City, New Jersey area in 2012, Congress passed legislation that led to the North Atlantic Coast Comprehensive Study. This was a large scale, so the North Atlantic, so everything from the Virginia-North Carolina border all the way up to Maine, that directed the Corps to study that area and identify measures that the Corps could take to reduce flood risk from coastal storms throughout that area. And as part of that study, the city of Norfolk was identified as one of 9 focus areas for additional future study. And so what that does is that, for us, well, for the rest of the region, when we hear, questions like, why is the Norfolk project not a regional project, or why are these studies not being done regionally? Well, two reasons. One is that the legislation specifically said City of Norfolk. And when Congress says City of Norfolk, Congress means the City of Norfolk. And that's unfortunate for us. I think, in hindsight, having a broader authority may have been more helpful to other communities as well, to look at this challenge regionally and not just focusing on those city boundaries. But we can't go back and change that decision. So now, Norfolk, the City of Norfolk is proceeding with this study. This study includes a number of different types of measures that they're looking at. So the structural measures, things like flood walls, but also non-structural measures like raising homes or filling in basements, and then also natural-based features as well. So things like living shorelines, wetlands protection, things like that. So it really is a comprehensive coastal storm risk management study. I will say, I want to highlight here that when they finalized that study, the estimated cost for total implementation was $1.4 billion. That includes both the Corps' share, which is 65%, and the city's share, which is 35%. Since then, the cost has gone up to $2.6 billion, and it's likely to rise even more as these things take quite a bit of time to complete. Costs are going up. We all experienced the shock in construction costs that happened post-COVID. Those costs aren't going down anytime soon, so these studies and implementation for these studies is only going to get more expensive over time. I don't want to get into too much detail with this project right now. I can try to answer questions if you have some later, but I do want to just highlight that these are long-term efforts. So the study itself may take only 3 years, and may take a few more years than that. Final construction for the project, for the Norfolk project, isn't going to be done until 2040 probably at the earliest, and it may extend even longer than that. So these things they take a long time to get through, but that's why it's important for us to invest in these studies so that we can get in the line, to get the funding, to get construction, to get that ball rolling, because the sooner we can get that started, then the sooner we'll finish eventually, right? So as long as we can get in the queue, as we can get in line for this kind of funding and these resources, that eventually we may actually get there. So the Virginia Beach study, this is one is more recent. This was authorized by that legislation that we helped get language into, the WRDA, the America's Water Infrastructure Act of 2018. The Water Resource Development Acts, they change their name every other year. This one is focused on coastal storm risks as well. The City of Virginia Beach is the non-federal sponsor. However, the scoping for this study allowed for them to look outside the city boundaries to factor in impacts to, but also impacts from areas that are outside, just right outside the city boundaries, right? And also into North Carolina as well, but also mostly into Norfolk and Chesapeake. And so, first example of a study using that authorization language that we helped draft, I want to highlight here. This is an example here where the study was much larger than the typical model, right? So instead of it being a 3 by 3 by 3, it's really a 6 by 13.5 by 4, I think, at this point, right? It broke the mold for these 3 by 3 by 3 studies, and that's, I think, something that is probably going to become more and more common as these costs balloon. This study is underway right now. They're working towards getting their tentatively selected plan, but the idea is that they would have a chief's report done by the spring of 2028. So again, they've been working on this study for several years now already. Still lots of work to go. And the Peninsula study, so this one is called the Peninsula Coastal Storm Risk Management Study. The non-federal sponsor is Hampton. One challenge I'll highlight here, so I mentioned with Virginia Beach that they relied on the authorization language that we helped draft from that 2018 WRDA. There were some changes in staffing at the Corps, at the headquarters and district level, and division level for the North Atlantic Division. And so there was a change in interpretation of some language in that WRDA, and so instead of this study using that language that we helped draft, it was intended to be very broad language. They went back to an old 1950s authorization that just highlighted coastal storms. I do not know the reason why that took place, only that it did. We found it was very disappointing to us that this occurred, and I think if in future studies we would want to push to have a more broad authorization so that our communities could take advantage of different types of resources from the Corps and not just focus on coastal storms. And I think one reason for that is because we're starting to experience more and more rainfall events combined with the coastal storm event, and the coastal storm authorization doesn't really allow for us to factor both of those things in together. And so that's a challenge with this particular study. They also ran into some hiccups with their funding. So the funding source for this particular study, you may notice that it's a federal cost of $3 million. There's no local money. There was some funding that they identified in the Disaster Recovery Act of 2019, I think, that the Corps had. I can get back to you with that exact information. But the way that legislation was written, it said that the Corps could spend the money. It did not authorize a non-federal sponsor to add resources to it. And so right now, there's a severe funding limitation for this, and also therefore a severe limitation on the scope of what this project is. And so instead of it being the very broad peninsula-wide study that we were all hoping for, it has only focused on part of Hampton and part of Pecoston, and it's focused right now solely on non-structural measures. And so that's, I think, been, it's a disappointment, I think, to us at the PDC that we have been limited, or this study has been limited in such a way. And I think, the reason why I highlight those things about these studies is that the language in these measures, it really does matter. What the authorization is, where the funding is coming from, who the sponsor is, these details really matter. And so for other communities that are interested in participating or working with the Corps to get one of these studies on board, that working out some of these kinks ahead of time, working out that precise language that they need, is critical to making sure that you get the project that you want. So moving on, just a couple more things here I want to highlight. One is the Community Flood Preparedness Fund. If you're not aware of this is a state program created by the General Assembly back in 2020. It was originally established along with the legislation that moved Virginia into the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, and helped it. So that legislation allocated 45% of the proceeds from those auctions to the CFPF, provided funding for localities to deal with flood protection issues. So this is a really exciting program. Virginia is currently no longer in the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative. We withdrew at the end of 2023, but there's currently legislation that is working its way through the General Assembly to put Virginia back in to RGGI, which would then bring that funding back into the CFPF. And that's really exciting for us because this is a huge contributor. This is really the biggest program in Virginia at the state level to provide funding for localities that want to do flood protection projects. This is just shows the amount of the rate, the price per auction, and how that's gone up over the years. The light blue there on the right side, those are the auctions that Virginia missed out on because we had exited RGGI. But the fiscal impact statement from the General Assembly estimated that, if Virginia rejoins, and we just use some of the averages from the amount of money in terms of the number of credits, but also the average amount for these different auctions that have been held recently, that's another $460 million coming into Virginia every year, and a little less than half of that would be going into the Community Flood Preparedness Fund. So that's really exciting to see that another $200 or so million a year of funding going into the CFPF available to localities to take advantage of, to fund studies, plans, and projects at the local level. A couple things about it. One is that at least 25% of the money that's spent every year has to go to low-income areas, and priority is also given to community-scale hazard mitigation activities. And then, in order to qualify for project funding, your community has to have an approved resilience plan, and Portsmouth does have an approved plan. Yes. So, good for the city. Does tee you up to get some funding there. I mentioned, the CFPF, you can use it for different types of things: capacity building and planning work, technical studies like H&H studies or other modeling work, gathering data for flooding. One of the things that we've seen over the years is that having good data is critical to doing these projects well. And then again, project money as well, which is the most exciting thing I think we like to see is these projects being designed and then built to help protect our communities from flooding. And Hampton Roads has really, really benefited from this. Over the years, I think, I won't say we're getting more than we deserve. I think we're getting less than, we should be getting all of it, but we're, the region is really doing well and has taken advantage of this program, and I think that's going to continue to happen. That just over the 6 rounds that have been awarded so far, that the region has brought in over $100 million of funding through grants and loans. Portsmouth has been a recipient of some of those, so I just want to highlight here, not to make you look like you're not taking advantage of this program, because you are, and those are 2 very large grants that the city was able to get for those 2 activities there. But a few of our communities have really taken this to heart, and I think, when I see this, and I think I want all of my communities, all of our communities at the PDC to have a list as long as Hampton's on a slide like this. Hampton is really going just all out with a CFPF, taking advantage of it. Norfolk the same. Newport News has done some great work. Virginia Beach is doing great work getting these grants in to do design, construction, and some planning work as well. Chesapeake. I think Portsmouth is well suited to also taking advantage of this program. And I think there's some of the data work that's been done, the planning work, but the approved resilience plan is something that really sets up Portsmouth to do well in applying for future funding, and we anticipate that there will be another round of funding opening up later this year. So round 6 was just announced in January, the recipients there, but typically they've done about 1 round per year. And then the last thing I want to highlight here is, it's Mayor Glover, and Manager Carter, through participating on our board, every year the PDC adopts a regional legislative agenda. We don't lobby, but we do kind of put out that the region as a whole supports a certain number of initiatives and measures. I want to highlight here, we are advocating for a state program that would provide assistance for these non-federal or for federal projects. So right now, the local or the non-federal share for a core project is 35%. We would like the state to step up and help to reduce those costs for localities that are taking part. So to create a separate source of funding that would be so localities that are participating in these core projects would be able to take advantage and not have as much of the impact or the burden fall on those individual communities. Continuing to fund and really increasing the amount of funding for the Community Flood Preparedness Fund. Again, that's been a key plank of ours for several years now. And then the adoption or the creation of this new, what we're calling Regional Infrastructure and Readiness Framework. That we think, if it passes through the General Assembly, and hopefully they allocate some funding as well to help the region do this work, to come up with a process to help to rank and prioritize resilience projects so that we have something similar to what we do with the Long Range Transportation Plan at the MPO, the TPO, that would allow us to really go and make the case for additional state investments or state enabling legislation for regional investments in resilience infrastructure, across the region. So that's all I have. I'd be happy to answer other questions you may have, and if I don't have the answers for you, I'd be happy to help direct you where you need to go.
But thank you, Mr. McFarland. We really appreciate it, and thank you and your team. You guys do amazing work. You're a small attack team, and you do amazing work. But just to put this in perspective, when he was talking in terms of billions, the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel, the new tunnel that's being built, is the largest construction project in the United States. Is that correct?
If it's not, it's up there.
Pretty close,
Yeah.
but the price tag on the new HRBT was $3 to $4 billion. Is that correct? Somewhere around there?
It was, I think. I don't know, Greg, what's
Greg,
it?
help me out, Greg. 3.8. 3.8, 3 to 4 billion. So that's just to kind of wrap your head around what kind of dollars this kind of infrastructure takes. So, Councilman Tillage, sir, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. So I have more of a statement. It's more of a statement than a question. So in 2025, I was appointed by the General Assembly to serve on the Joint Commission on the Joint Subcommittee on Recurrent Flooding. And one of the bills that we were looking at proposing was to enhance the community flooding fund. And so I know Senator Williams Graves, she has a bill that is in the House now for deferring interest on projects that are related to resiliency. And so I was looking at this list and seeing the list of projects that are across the region. And I know we have a plan for resiliency in Portsmouth, but to really identify these projects and get them out here, because attending these subcommittee meetings in Richmond, when I tell you our sister cities are like vultures on these projects, they're pretty much, I don't want to name no names, but I will. The city of Norfolk and Virginia Beach are swallowing these projects up left and right. So for us to be able to be proactive in identifying these projects and get funding is very essential, because the dollars they were talking about adding for this year in the budget is pretty much Norfolk and Virginia Beach have already tried to claim it. And so we really need to get on the ball on identifying these as soon as possible.
Yeah, good point. Councilwoman Thomas, ma'am, you have the floor.
Thank you. I just wanted to follow up. So, Councilman Tillage, can you share who do they have grant writers there? Who do those cities have?
So, I know, for example, the city of Norfolk, they have a department that's dedicated to resiliency.
To resiliency, okay. And Councilman Dotson, he wanted to throw this out, but he had to step out for a second. So he asked me to mention it, but it's right in line with that. Regarding our need for, to your point, a resiliency department, specialized grant writer, something to focus specifically on us stepping our game up, essentially, to grab some of these projects and funding. So that was something he wanted to put out there as a takeaway as well.
Anybody else? Well, I did have a question. Looking at the list that you shared, Mr. McFarland, it appears that we're not as assertive and aggressive at obtaining dollars. But I know I can talk to the manager about this. What do you think, based on what you see coming, that Portsmouth can do to be more competitive for these grants and opportunities? Is it a part of being competitive and putting forth your best information and your story?
So I think that's a great question. I would say I think there are a number of projects that have been identified in Portsmouth that would be competitive. I think one of the challenges that we see with several of our communities is capacity. I think that comes up, that having the capacity to put together the grant proposals, to manage the grants, the fiscal responsibility to file the reports with the DCR, and to just kind of do all the little things that it takes to actually get a grant from application development to closeout and actually have a project built. That's a challenge for all of our communities. And I think, certain communities, Norfolk and Hampton in particular, have made it a priority to invest in, they have resilient staff that help put together these proposals. I don't think that's necessary for every community to do that. It's the kind of decision that's best made each community on its own. But I think in terms of the types of applications that we see that are competitive, I mentioned, community scale, so if it has a large enough impact, right? So not just one parcel, but something that maybe a road corridor, and I know the city has been successful in getting some DoD funding through the Defense Community Infrastructure Program, for example.
That's right.
Which not every community is eligible for that, but Portsmouth is, for example. But also projects that have some sort of natural component, living shorelines, wetlands restoration, other projects or components such as that. And then also, so there are, I think, some real opportunities in Portsmouth. I think, the question is, and I think this would apply to really anything, is that, where is it in the city's overall list of priorities, right? And so, I would never, call out one of my communities for not applying to this, because it's not my place to judge. But the opportunity is there, and this is a statewide program, so it's not just Hampton Roads. Really, we are, as a region, doing very well with this, but other regions are starting to catch up. And so, but the opportunity is still there, and I think with this additional funding that we see coming through, hopefully, that we'll be getting additional funding, whatever the source for this fund, in this year and also in future years, that the resources will be there to bring even more projects to Hampton Roads, regardless of, where in the region they are. But I think Portsmouth is as well suited. There are a number of, I think, metrics in Portsmouth that would make you very competitive with certain types of projects.
That's what we needed to hear. Councilwoman Bryan and then Councilman Hugo.
Thank you, Mr. McFarland. I'm not sure if this is the right timing to ask this question, but you mentioned the Norfolk project, which is a huge project, and that gets kicked around in conversation on our side pretty frequently. So can you give us some just basic updates and maybe inform us where we stand on how that project might impact us, or even what it might look like to us on this side of the river?
It's a great question, and where they are right now. So I would like to, I guess, preface this by saying I think that a full brief on that project would probably be better to come from Norfolk and then the Corps. And I think that we would be happy to help facilitate a conversation like that. Based on our conversations with both the city and with the Corps, they're in the middle of design. They're doing some initial kind of prep work for construction on part of the flood wall. So that's that first phase of the kind of the phase one of the project. It's been broken up into several kind of sub phases. So they're working on getting to the point where they're going to start putting things in the ground. The strategy there involves mostly flood walls, some berms and levees, and also some storm surge gates across water bodies. If you're asking about whether or not there will be impacts to flooding in Portsmouth based on what you're seeing across the river, the short answer to that is not likely too many impacts, if any. I think, and I will say I'm a planner, not an engineer, but I read and I ask questions. And so when they were doing the initial feasibility study, the Corps determined, based on their engineering judgment, that risks to increasing flood risks outside of the area of interest were likely to be negligible. Now, they determined that during that process. I can say now is that they're in the middle of updating some of the models that they're using to actually inform the design of that project. And so the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, their Engineering Research and Design Center or Development Center, they are updating the storm surge models that are used. So when they actually calculate, like when they determine how the water moves during a coastal storm event, there's some very sophisticated models that they use for that. They use those models in the initial feasibility study. They're updating them to actually make them higher resolution so they'll be better. So they'll be able to actually model not just kind of how the water moves around, but also impacts to water quality. And so when they complete that work, they'll be able to give us a much better determination on what, if any, impacts there might be outside of the city.
When would that be?
It's supposed to be later this year. I don't have an idea of exactly when that is. That deadline is somewhat shifting, but they anticipate having it. The latest I've heard is sometime around, late Q2, Q3 of this year is when they might have something together, and we can try to get a closer date on that for you. But I think to be honest, it's a little bit of a moving target.
And so if those models reveal something that would significantly impact Portsmouth, what happens?
So I would say that's a question better for the Corps, but there would be some responsibility there to mitigate whatever those impacts might be. And I think if they were found to be...
They can't just put us underwater.
No, I don't believe they can. No.
I mean, you gotta ask the question, right?
And CJ's in the back there, and he's shaking his head, so they cannot just put us on, put you under the water. I think, one thing to keep in mind is that the amount of water, we're talking about a very large Atlantic Ocean that's putting water into the large Chesapeake Bay, into the somewhat smaller Elizabeth River, and then all of that water, whatever water is displaced by the flood wall in Norfolk, is a drop in the bucket compared to all of the water that we're really talking about, right? It's not just going to go from Norfolk over to Portsmouth, but that water is going to get dispersed throughout the watershed. And so, we're talking, it may look like a lot of water when you just look at the city of Norfolk, but when you spread that water around, it doesn't end up being all that much in terms of additional higher elevation for the water.
So, understood, and thank you for that. And we will certainly follow up on our side.
Finger crossed.
What about the aesthetics of it? We're about to develop our waterfront, and we have this fabulous view. It's kind of hard to wrap your mind around what this will look like from our side.
Understood. That's a great question. I don't know if they've finalized the designs to the point where you would get an understanding of kind of what it would look like. Okay. I do, it's a much better question for the city and for the Corps. I would say I think that the questions about aesthetics for these flood protection structures, wherever they are touchy subjects, right? And so what people see, and I think that needs to be balanced against what the value is that you or your neighbors are getting from these structures wherever they are, right? So Portsmouth there's a seawall here, right? We have some experience with seawalls in the region and the impacts they have on local aesthetics and what people see in their community. But then again, for certain areas, those are the best way to protect against flooding, and so there's that balance. And so I think, in the city, over there in Norfolk, they do appreciate that argument, right? They're going to be seeing it as well. So I think, that kind of balancing that desire to protect ourselves from flooding with the desire to maintain a community that looks good, that we are all proud to live in and to live in and walk around and be in from an aesthetic perspective. That is a key thing that residents and leaders are discussing, need to discuss further. But in terms of specifics about what it's going to look like, I don't have the answer for you right now. They are working on updating their renderings, I know the city has produced some new ones over the last several months. Whether they have the level of detail to really answer your questions, I don't know. But again, I think they'd be, unfortunately, their city council also meets on Tuesdays. But if it would be of assistance, I think we would be happy to try to help facilitate having the resilience staff from Norfolk come and talk to you about that project. I can't obviously promise to have Norfolk come and do anything, but I will certainly ask.
Councilman Hugo.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor, and thanks for the brief. So this past year, we had the OLDCC resiliency study. Is it true that, so you said we don't get federal money without an Army Corps resiliency study, but we can acquire federal funds using the OLDCC study, yes?
Yeah, so the Corps money, so the Army Corps of Engineers funding through the Water Resource Development Act has to go through that process, but there are other sources of federal money that you are eligible for, and that's one of them.
Okay, but we always want to have the most access to other people's money. So, what exactly do we have to do to get a feasibility study set in motion inside the Army Corps swim lane?
Sure, that's a great question. The first thing to do, I think, would be to reach out to the Norfolk District and have that conversation, express your interest, and then work on developing a proposal. In terms of when, that might get in the line, I think the first step is just to actually submit something, a request. Certainly working with, our congressional delegation can't hurt when it comes to that. But in terms, there's really no guarantees on when you might be able to get in that line to be what they call a new start. So there are congressionally mandated limits on the number of new starts for these types of projects. I believe the limit is 10 per year right now, and that's nationwide. So it's very challenging, unless there's some sort of special circumstance, to get any new project on that list. But the first step is to have that conversation with the district staff to begin putting that proposal together.
And so then so we would propose some kind of broad scope, and then there would be, when we finally get the go button, then the scope gets refined?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Really appreciate you.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate being here.
For that detailed proposal. Now, if you find a couple billion laying around for resiliency, just send it to Portsmouth.
That's with a B. Okay.
No, you get a couple billion. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our public work session. We do have a need to go into closed session. And with that, Vice Mayor Moody, would you please read the closed session motion?
Move to go into a closed meeting pursuant to Virginia Code subsection 2.2-3711A1 for the purpose of discussion by the city manager regarding a personnel matter.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Yes, sir. Ms. Bryant?
Yes.
Dr. Dotson?
Yes.
Mr. Hugel?
Aye.
Mr. Moody?
Yes.
Ms. Thomas?
Yes.
Mr. Tillage?
Yes.
Mayor Glover?
Yes. We are in closed session.
Council member certify that to the best of his or her knowledge, one, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements under Virginia Freedom of Information Act, and two, only such public business matters that were identified in the motion by which the closed meeting was convened were heard, discussed, or considered in the closed meeting just concluded.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Yes, sir. Ms. Bryant?
Yes.
Dr. Dotson?
Yes.
Mr. Hugel?
Aye.
Mr. Moody?
Yes.
Ms. Thomas?
Yes.
Mr. Tillage?
Yes.
Mayor Glover?
Yes.
Thank you.
That concludes our public work session. Thank you. Mr. Carter, I need to chat with you for a minute, please.